This Dexa scan didn't just tell me what my bone density was or what my body fat was. It showed me what I'm actually working with in terms of lean mass, fat distribution, visceral fat, the full picture. Then I did a resting metabolic rate RMR test, and that tells me how many calories my body burns at rest. And that number stopped me in my tracks because it made me realize that I've been trying to navigate this postpartum season with effort and good intentions, when what I really needed was data and a smarter plan. If you're new here, I'm Sarah. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition and health coach. And before having a baby, I lost 65 pounds and maintained that for well over a decade. But postpartum, I started dealing with things that just didn't make sense. I had super low energy. I had brittle hair. I had skin breakouts. I had weight that wouldn't budge, even though I was doing all the right things. That's what pushed me to start testing. So I got some labs done. Those came back normal, but there were things like low vitamin D or lower range vitamin D that really gave me a fresh starting point because it made me start to make changes in my nutrition. And once I did that, I decided to dig a little bit deeper. Now, if you want the full breakdown of my lab work, including how I began to improve my vitamin D without supplementing, then that's all covered in the previous episode. I will link it below. But let's move on to the Dexa scan and the RMR testing. Now, just to be really clear, this episode is not about weight loss, but weight loss has been a byproduct of all of the things I've been doing over the past 5 months. More importantly, this is about finding my energy again. It's about feeling like myself again. And it's about feeling like I'm alive in my body after having a baby. I got a DEXA scan because the number on the scale is just your gravitational pull towards the earth. It tells me nothing about my health. And I wanted to actually know what my weight was made up of. So, a DEXA scan that I got from Composition ID, it's a local company, they showed my lean mass, my fat mass, my bone density, and where my fat is stored in my body. And this information matters postpartum. Now, I have mentioned that I can be super mindful and intentional with my meals, but quite honestly, I wasn't tracking anything. And the truth is, what doesn't get measured often doesn't change. Not because you're failing, but because you're guessing. And I wasn't looking for control when I got the DEXA scan and the RMR testing, but I was looking for a baseline. Today, I am sitting 10 pounds lighter. I have better energy. I feel better in my body overall. And that only changed because of these results. To be honest, some of the numbers were surprising to say the least. My scale weight when I got the scan done was 170.6 pounds. My body fat percentage was 39.6%. That number really surprised me, being that I am someone who consistently works out. I lift a lot, I do cardio, like I do it all. But that number was fairly high, in my opinion. That put me right around 65 pounds in terms of fat mass, and my lean mass was just under 100 pounds. With that, there's gynoid and android fat as well. So, gynoid fat is typically stored around the hips and the thighs. Android fat is more centrally located, so around the abdomen. In the postpartum season, central fat is often tied to hormones, stress, and just sleep deprivation. So, my android to gynoid ratio was 1.13. And then we go to visceral fat. Visceral fat is the amount of fat that lines your internal organs. Now, if this is too high, this can often lead to certain diseases, but mine was right around 1.71 pounds. So nothing super alarming, but it was a signal that my body was under a little more stress than what I initially realized. There was some good news to the DEXA scan, though. My bone density came back super strong. Thank you, weightlifting. But these numbers, they didn't scare me. They did give me clarity. And if you've been following along on this series and any of this resonates with you, make sure you subscribe. I'm revisiting all the things I've done over these past few months and just connecting them to what has changed since. And in the next few episodes, I'm going even deeper with it all. But I want to jump into the RMR testing. RMR stands for resting metabolic rate. Now, it's the number of calories that your body burns at rest just to keep you alive. Okay, so you got that, the amount of energy that your body burns at rest just to keep you alive. And usually, this is the minimum amount of calories that you should be eating per day. Based on the results, my resting metabolic rate was at 1,236 calories per day. That number was really depressing. I'm not even going to lie. I am someone who loves, loves, loves food. And 1,236 calories a day like scrapes the bottom of the barrel in terms of food intake. Like, super disappointing. Now, this number can change based on if you have more muscle mass because it takes more energy for your body to maintain muscle mass. So, that just, again, this information is just telling me things that I needed to change or work on. But this also kind of explained why me pushing harder, trying to aim for 7,000 steps a day, being more mindful, it just wasn't working because you can't out effort physiology, especially postpartum. Now, this leads me to being mindful versus things being measured. Yes, we can be mindful, we can be more intentional, but again, unless something changes, nothing changes. And I think I was kind of doing the same thing in terms of my intentions, like adding more fruits and vegetables and things like that, but I was still eating a good amount of food, especially compared to my resting metabolic rate. So that's when I'm like, okay, maybe we do need to bring in some measuring tools. So that's where I began to track my food. And it didn't mean that I was tracking forever. I actually tracked for about 2.5 months, um, just to kind of get an idea of where I was hitting. And these days weren't about perfection, they were really about feedback and to stop flying blindly in in my health journey. So once I had the DEXA scan and the RMR testing, my approach to nutrition, to my fitness, it changed. I stopped trying to add more effort and I really started to formulate a plan to make sure that I was hitting fiber goals, to make sure that I was getting my protein, to make sure that my strength training was building from week to week and it wasn't just random workouts I was doing. I was focused on daily movement without the overwhelm. Overall, it was about consistency and not intensity. Now, going back to my workouts, I really needed structure without overwhelm. And so I made a plan. I actually called it the comeback plan, and it lives inside the RepKey Fitness app because what it did for me was it made sure that I was strength training 3 times a week, but it was a progressive overload program so that each and every month I could look back on the previous month and I could see my progress, whether that was progress in how much weight I was lifting or how many reps I was doing. And that just really kept me motivated along the way. Again, if you want access to this program, it's in the link below. But next time, I'm going to dive even deeper into these workouts and I'm going to dive even deeper into my food logs and just kind of show you what I've been doing over these past few months. I'm also going to sit down with Lubin, my husband, and we're going to dive into the early postpartum days and kind of get his perspective on it, what helped, what didn't, and just how we supported each other along the way because, to be honest, it was a rough go of it for a while. Now, if you're in the same season where you feel like you're doing everything right, but you still don't have a ton of clarity, just know you're not broken, that moms matter too, and sometimes you just need a little more information. So here we're focusing on the nutrition, we're focusing on the movement, and we're focusing on the mindset so that you can feel like the best version of yourself. I'll see you in the next episode.